Hey, good evening. Welcome back to Hacking on Fee. I'm gonna kind of dive right in with some general refactors. I think last time I was focused on just kind of taking the original U project and converting the JSX like HTML macro usage into actual JSX. And when I was doing that, I just kind of like dumped everything in this single app.tsx. And so just to make things easier to work with, I'm gonna probably try to refactor some of this stuff so that these components are in separate files. See if I can remember how these refactor tools work. I think this is how this goes. Player cards and player. Yeah, that's true. Kind of get everything spun up here. Here's my back end. And this is the Create React App project. Currently, the app is not doing too much. We've got the basic DOM structure laid out. And that's about it. But okay, so moving stuff around, separate files, just breaking this up. Card pickers next. And I guess the goal tonight is going to be, I think, to configure Apollo, get the Apollo client working, and try to maybe talk to the back end. I think the other way we could go is to try and set up props for each of these components. But I'm not entirely sure exactly how I want the data to flow. There are a couple of different thoughts on this. In the original U app, basically all the data was being managed at the very top level, like at the app, the root component. So that's the component where we would open up a connection with the WebSocket to the back end, and we would send the initial kind of init request and register the player, and then pull down a game state, and all that kind of stuff would happen right at the root. And we would use partial equality, so like value equality, which is kind of like the expensive shallow equals that we see in JavaScript. So we relied on that a lot on the Rust side of things to decide whether or not components should update or not. And so because of that, everything could happen right at the root, and we could minimize the updates that happen further down in the component tree. But that's a more costly way to go when you don't have something like partial equals to rely on. So all that to say, I may not want to do all my data fetching and all of my signal processing at that top level, because it's going to mean updating like the entire component tree repeatedly. But when you're talking about a baby app like this with, 2 levels and not very many components, there are kind of no wrong answers. So I can do the most expensive thing and make it cheaper if needed at all later. Not a huge deal. So yeah, I'm gonna ignore rigging up props for right now. I'm also gonna clean up my working copy a little bit here. What was happening here? I think I did oh yeah, I added a little logging to the back end. It looks like there was a gap. If no players were registered, then the broadcast for connected WebSockets wouldn't work right. It would throw errors. So that was a thing. And there was one other thing where I updated the async GraphQL dependency. Hey, Palanday, welcome aboard. The IntelliJ plugin, there's a plugin for GraphQL which basically lets you run client stuff from your editor. For whatever reason, when it sends payloads to your GraphQL backend, it sets the content type to application JSON, and then it uses a semicolon and specifies a charset, which is technically not legal per the HTTP spec. I have no idea what they were thinking, but that's something they did, and the async GraphQL maintainers had some validation there that was breaking because of that. But they removed their validation for me. So that was a head scratcher. So So yeah, what the plugin gets me, and this should be helpful, is if you have this this GraphQL config file, you can tell it a backend to connect to, and then you can run queries with it, but you can also ask it to pull down a copy of the schema, which is what just came here, and that should be a file on disk, which can be used for Apollo's CodeGen features, which I'm not going to jump into right away. That will probably be one of the last few things that I look at, but long term, that's something I would like to have. But it's weird, and I'll explain when I get there. But yeah, basically it cooks up custom types for the queries that you write. So it scans your application for GraphQL queries, and it says, okay, this query should be returning the set of fields in this kind of a data structure. So here's a randomly named type. It's not random. They've got a naming scheme, but yeah, they generate a type on the fly for the output of your query. Pretty weird. So there's all that. Yeah, and so the other thing that this plugin does is it allows you to open up a Scratch file, which is kind of IntelliJ's sort of, I don't know what else to say about it. The Scala plugin famously had this thing called a worksheet, which was inspired by the official Scala IDE's worksheets, which are Scratch files that you can evaluate. So what does this mean? I can run a query here like oh, something's not right. That's interesting. Unknown field register. Oh, I know. Register is a mutation, not a query. These are different things. So I can ask for a game state, and I can ask it if anyone's calling, and I can ask it for the players, but I only want to know the IDs of the players. I don't care about anything else in this example. And so I can control enter, and it executes that stuff against the back end. You see that log line here. And yeah, so I can use this to kind of see how things are going before the app all comes together. Could be helpful. I think probably the way this is going to go is I'm going to wire up a bunch of things that are going to send data before I wire up the stuff that's going to read a lot of data. That's kind of what I imagine is going to happen. But let's see, maybe we'll see what happens. So, checking out some docs. One of the things I love about the whole front-end JavaScript ecosystem is that everything is changing all the time. And I think, yeah, it wasn't even a year ago that I did this E2E RS project where I did multiple versions of kind of back-end to front-end type checking. And yeah, it looks like everything's changed since I did this last time. So I guess I'll just refer to the docs and follow along, but I'm going to be, installing the packages that they're recommending here, probably borrowing heavily from these introductory snippets just to get everything set up. And this is kind of like where I may find that my proxy setup is going to fail me. I had some doubts about whether or not it was going to work. So there's a thing with proxying HTTP and WebSocket on the same endpoint. I wasn't sure if I configured it right. Anyway. So we need 2 to start. Apollo client and GraphQL. And so what else? I jumped down to, they have a section down here at the bottom for the React API. So, which I guess what I was looking at initially was just the plain JavaScript framework agnostic kind of setup. But yeah, on the React side, they've got a provider for me. Apollo provider from client. Oh, I see. They want me to set up a... Actually, I can move this up to the index. I can just wrap that around my whole app. And then somewhere around here, I've got to configure a Apollo client. And it's kind of bad form to set this stuff up like at the module scope. But I'm going to do it anyway. So that's the wrong language right there. I'm guessing this is going to be like a new class. Let's refer back to, yeah, a new Apollo client with some options. They've got a cache that you can set, but it definitely needs a URI, which per my proxy config should have been like I think it's like GQL. Maybe I can skip telling it the protocol. Setup proxy, right, /GQL. Doesn't like that. Takes you a bit to switch between languages too, yeah. I think it's got to be a common thing. You know, a lot of people have these like life hacks for dealing with a polyglot lifestyle where they like change the font that they use or change the color scheme in their editor depending on what language they're writing at the time. And I should probably put a little more thought into that. But, you know, hopefully if you have enough feedback from compilers and that kind of thing, it's not that big of a deal. Zelda's Lullaby again, yes. So not assignable. I can't type. Okay, so cache is missing. So it definitely needs that cache. And the example in the docs says that I can use the in-memory cache, which seems like a good place to start. Okay. I really wonder what's going to happen here. So what I did notice was that they have some docs on setting up subscriptions, which is where a lot of my question marks are still hanging around. And it looks like basically the client config gets a lot more complicated in that case, where you have to like set it up so that the client knows to use WebSockets when it's talking about a subscription interaction, and to use HTTP when it's doing regular queries. So I guess I won't worry about it too much. Standing desk, awesome green screen, both? Well, I guess both. Yeah, I guess both. There's definitely a green screen here. I don't have this stuff projected up on the wall behind me. So let's see. All right, so we've got a client. We're passing it to the provider, and that means that anywhere under this in the component tree, I should be able to use hooks, which is like the newfangled React thing. So they've got hooks for the different types of operations that you can do. There's like use query, use mutation is somewhere in here. Use lazy query, that's kind of interesting. Use subscription. So that's all the stuff that I'm going to be looking at. I'll leave subscription for last because it's got all that extra setup to worry about. What else? I guess we'll start with use query and just try to get something, some kind of a smoke test. Because I just want to know if my app is actually able to talk to the back end or not. So the way this flow worked in the old version was when I initiated the WebSocket connection to the back end, the back end would create a new UUID for the connection and then send it over the WebSocket back to the client. And it would just say, hey, okay, this is who you are. And then I would use that UUID on the back end to basically like hold on to a socket address is what it was called. And so that kind of gave me a way to direct messages to individual clients, as well as broadcast them by just like sending on all channels to all connections. For the GraphQL version, it's a little bit different because I don't have that same kind of everything's going through the WebSocket. I think we're kind of splitting things up across like stateless and stateful, two different sets of deals. So I had to add extra kind of query stuff in order for this whole interaction to work. So we'll start with use query. I always want to type SQL instead of GQL. See? Every time. Okay. So I don't know exactly how this works, but something in the Apollo library says that it's able to look for these template strings that have the GQL prefix, and it does special stuff to them. It's weird. So what am I building? Let me see if I can figure out a way to recap briefly. Oh my God. Oh, I am getting the completion in here, which is kind of nice. And also this reminds me that I need a use mutation, not a use query for this. So what am I building? I think I have a Docker container with the old implementation. There we go. Okay, so this is Phi. Phi is a WebSocket kind of low latency focused multi-user thing where people pick cards and then certain people who know the secret can also pick, and then they can reveal the cards. If you've ever done agile planning poker, this is what this is meant for. We used to do this in person around a conference table at work, but since everybody's been work from home for most of the year, decided to cook something up that we could use remotely. So it just makes our planning meetings a little bit easier having something like this in place. And so this implementation was written with a Rust backend and a Rust front end. I used U to build this, and I found that the U front end work was really horrible. It was not good. So I thought I would use this as an excuse to take something that was already built and working and then kind of try some new tech. So I adapted the backend and put a GraphQL endpoint in there, and now I'm revisiting the front end, porting it to React. So that's what we're going for. Yeah, and hopefully it won't take that long to get through. We've got most of the bones here already. We just need to work on, the connective tissue between the front end and the back end. The back end is still Rust, yes. So, okay, we've got that mutation call in there. What do we have here? Oh, okay. So this is me just forgetting how the mutations work. I think part of the deal here is use mutation is gonna give me back a function that I can call. Is that right? It's a tuple. I need to just read the docs, I guess. So here's what they say. So there's a function and then there's data that the function returns maybe. This is like a value bind. Oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. So there are a couple of things going on. Since the function bodies for React components run every time the component updates, we need to kind of we need to move this code into a block that will only run during certain lifecycle events. So what we really want to do is we want to log the data when it changes, or rather every time the component updates. That's fine. But we want to call this getClientID function inside of a use effect. And use effects have this dependency list. And so what we can do there is we can put values in there that will prompt this function to run when they change based on their object identity. This is something that trips people up a lot. But then there's this weird notion where if you pass it in an empty array, that basically says, okay, this code will run when the component mounts or unmounts. And those are the only times. And so this kind of matches what I had in the original version, which was when app mounts, the WebSocket connection would open up, and that's what would feed back the client ID. So let's see what data looks like here. Okay, so we've got register coming back with a UUID on it. Seems good. And okay, so the Apollo code gen part that I haven't looked at yet would basically give me, it would automatically type whatever this is. Instead of being data any, it would have a custom type on there that would tell me exactly what the fields were and what their types are. But for now, I've got so little going on. I can probably get by without it. And I'll wire that up as an academic exercise right before I put this project to bed. Okay, So they're complaining that I am calling use query and I'm not using query. That's fine. We can call use query now. I think it's kind of interesting that GraphQL splits up the reads and writes this way into two separate, like, broad categories of query. I'm sure that helps optimize some things. Okay, so the use query example is slightly different. They I guess I'm going to leave that blank for right now. So there are some other parameters that can pass into this hook. And it looks like they do parameter binds. So you can have a section here called variables that will get interpolated into your query. So that's how you handle, like, argument passing and stuff. That's kind of interesting. I also kind of like how it uses these, like, string blocks as the unit of reuse. So you register all your queries. Like, I could dump all of these in a common module somewhere. It's kind of neat. So let's see. There's a number of things here that get returned. Error. And then data again. Okay. So we can't have two datas. But what I can do is I think I can, like, destructure this thing. There is a way that I can say to alias this. But I'm not sure. I think that's how that goes. Just gonna print a bunch of stuff out here. The compiler's complaining that I'm not passing in the dependency of getClientID here, which is fair, I guess. But I do want to think about the on mount versus triggered refiring of this code block. So empty array is really correct here. Yeah. So they're giving me the hint that I can test lint. Just cut the lint out. Yeah, I think that's more correct. Uh-oh, something's bad. Cannot read property cards of undefined. Okay. So it's given me some hassle here because I can't destructure this, I guess. Not yet. I'm reading through all the backtraces on the in the browser console here. Yeah. So I guess I can alias here. Do it like that. There we go. Yeah, that's a fair hit. So the question mark deal here is optional field access, which is a TypeScript thing. So if registered data is undefined, instead of getting a illegal attribute error like I got before, it'll short circuit this. So it'll be undefined as soon as it hits that breakpoint condition there, and it'll short circuit. But when it's not undefined, I get the value back. And we can see that the component is updating over and over again, and it just keeps logging stuff out. I should label this stuff. Oh, that's interesting. I've got image lookups happening that I deleted a bunch of files. Why are those happening? Something in the manifest. Okay, I guess I would need to clean up a little bit more since I removed some of the stock icons and stuff from the Create React App project. But okay, and there's a lot of garbage in this output. But okay, so this last log line here, it's telling me the loading is over. It's no longer in flight. There's no errors. We've got card data. And this is the set of cards that you may remember from the completed app. So we got those. And we've got the register, like the client ID back. And so once we have the client ID, That's when we can actually set a name on the player. Am I ready for that? What else do I want to get into first? I guess no. I guess I'll stick with this, and I will. I'll write another query. And I'm just going to ask for everything. I'm going to get the ID, the selected card, and the name. I think that's all the fields I've defined for players. Yeah, this is kind of gross. So I'm going to have to immediately think about learning how Apollo handles cache. Because what I would really want is for the card data to be cached effectively forever, because the deck of cards never changes. And I guess really in reality, the game state stuff is going to be handled via subscription. So actually, this is really just a stand-in for something that's going to happen later, I guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to suffix these. Loading GS, error GS. It doesn't like what? Oh, right. I don't get to pick what the fields are named, but I can override them. That's kind of what's going on there. Because this entire thing is a destructuring. So, well, what's going on here? I don't know what... Okay. I don't know what that was. Yeah, I suppose I can actually just remove all that stuff since I don't really care about it right now. Yep, so here I am just fetching stuff and logging it all out. There's some game state data. Tells us how many connected players we have, what their names are. They're all named guest. And what their card selections look like. They're not selecting anything. All right. Seems Seems good. So the is calling part. Yeah, let's see about breaking this down into values that I can share with subcomponents via props. I guess I'll lose some of this logging since things are working now. We know that stuff is firing. So I'm just going to start gathering up the vital statistics, the state of the game session. So is calling is one of the big ones. So we're going to get that from game state data for right now. And we're going to optionally chain all the way down. I think, actually, I can just optionally chain at the root there. And what else do I need to know? I need to know if we have player data. I need to know what the current player's selection is. So maybe yeah, I don't know exactly. This is going to be like an array of players. So I want to find items where the ID is a match for the client ID. And if we found one, I want to know what the selected card is. So that could be a number or undefined. And these this is pretty weak on the typing side of things. I suppose I'll tighten this up as I go, but can't really expect too much from TypeScript if you don't tell it what to think. But for right now, I'll tell it just not to worry about it too much. So yeah. So current card. So what do I need to know? I need to know what if I have players. And if I need to know if I have players, I need to try and break that down. I don't want to do that. need to back up for a moment. So client ID should be unknown or string, but we haven't given enough type information even at this point for the compiler to know that. But anyway, but assuming we have a truthy value for players and we have a truthy value for client ID, then we should be able to call get client ID. No, not that one. Get current selection. And so that tells us the current card for the player. I need a whole bunch of helpers, actually. What I really need is the current player, right? If I have the current player, then I can get the selection. I can get the selected card from that player object. So that's actually more like just a simple find. And if I really wanted to, I could type this a little harder. I could manually type it. Since I know that, so let's see, ID is string. Selected card. Actually, I'm not certain. So selected card can be undefined. The optional fields don't have this exclamation point. The exclamation point means that the field is mandatory. So selected card is potentially undefined. I guess I can just say it is like number undefined. Like that. Okay, so there are a couple of things wrong with the type signature now. Number one, we don't know, or rather, the compiler isn't smart enough to know what this is, so we can type it here as a player array or undefined, which makes this legal now. All right. So we've got a player. We've got all the players, maybe. We've got a client ID, maybe. So what next? I guess I'll start defining some props for these subcomponents and start feeding the data in. So we need a player name, we need to know the cards, which are a string array. I'm not actually sure we need the player, but we have it. We need to know the player name and we need to know the selected card. And I think that's all. What was I doing with this player? Yeah. So since object IDs are like the object identities tend to be important for signaling change in React apps, I want to avoid passing around objects because objects are like constantly getting new object IDs. But if I'm passing around a string and a number, those things have stable identities, which can help redundant updates, because they shouldn't be triggering things to re-render all the time if they have stable IDs. So selected card. So I could actually expand all of these things. Right there in the parameter list, but I'll do it here. Just removing all these stand-ins that I had there. Okay, so the compiler is now complaining about the fact that I haven't passed in any data. The component is saying, hey, we need these props, but you're not sending anything in. Oh, and you know what? There's one other thing that I need. I need to either have enough data here to change the selection, which would be via a mutation. Or I need to pass it in as a callback. And that's what I'm going to do, I think. It's kind of a shame that I need the player name here for the prompt. And maybe I can fix that later, but... yeah. Okay. So here's card picker. It's expecting data. Cards is required. Where am I going to get them now? And so this data being stuff that comes in late really kind of what I want to do is I want to like bail rendering the UI until that initial data comes back. I think not cards and not player accounts for most of this. Player won't come back until register completes and also that initial game state read happens. So let's try that. If not cards or not player, and this isn't really what I want. But it'll do in a pinch. Okay. So without this, oh yeah, the compiler is just not even smart enough yet. It's just any. So what else? On select, we need to give it player name, selected card. I guess really I could use an empty string here as a fallback if I didn't have a player. Okay. So on select, what I want to do is I want to use a mutation to set the card for the player. And this is the kind of thing that you know, it might make more sense in the end to move this query and the callback code and all of that stuff, move it down into the card picker. But wherever possible, I really try to make as many components as dumb as they can be. If there's a chance that a component can just render data without having to talk to a server, then that makes that component much easier to test and much easier to work with. So that's kind of what you want. But so these mutations, these get labels, and you can use these to like alias parameters and that kind of thing, but I think it's optional. So I'm going to try and ignore it for right now. Okay, so we need a card and a player ID. I'm going to refer to the docs again just to check what needs to happen here. Yeah, this is what I was talking about. They have this I don't know what the deal is there. I think I'm not sure why. I may have to do this in the end, but But okay, so the function that it passes back here can receive variables, and that's the important part. Set player card. I guess I'm gonna just kind of monkey see, monkey do to start until I read a little bit more. But yeah, player ID. I guess. So these need types. Int. And I think these are required. Yeah. So there's a weird thing with the selection model that I set up where toggling happens on the back end. So when you make a selection, you're always naming a specific card number, even if your intent is to deselect it. And the back end will decide whether to select or deselect based on the current state of the game. I don't know. It makes sense on its face if this was an optional field and you could like set null. But that's not how it works today. So anyway, okay. So once we have that stuff in there, we kind of like slot it in. Player ID. Okay. I don't get it, but that's how we're doing it. So this is what we're going to use to handle our selections. And we don't need any of the data to come back from this. It's returning a Boolean, which is meant to kind of like indicate success or failure, but yeah, technically that's not really important. Okay. So set player card. I'm going to use the use callback hook here, which will basically generate a function based on the presence of other values here in the component. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of memoize the function, so that we're not generating new functions every tick of the component. So onSelectCard is going to depend on the setPlayerCard function there. It also needs the client ID. And it's going to receive a card number from whoever calls it. And what it's going to do is it's going to call setPlayerCard with some variables. And then we got to look at the query again real quick. So we've got player ID, which is a UUID, and the card. Okay. That should about do it. And this is a promise, right? So this is complaining because it wants me to do something with the promise to measure the outcome. So if it fails, I'm just going to log something out so that it doesn't just fail silently. Okay, so what else do we need? Is calling, and then it's happy. I keep closing the app, I think. I don't know where that went. Oh, what did I break? I am not getting game state back. What's going on here? I think I have Yeah, I have an Apollo component here. Or excuse me, a DevTools deal. I don't know what this is. So just for my sanity, I guess briefly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut down the back end and then start it back up again. All the game state lives in process memory, so by doing that, I'm basically resetting the board. And so I can see from my console log that the player is undefined, which is interesting. If I hold on. If I rerun this query, there is a player registered, right?
I need you.
There's definitely a player. So what's up with my players? There should be something coming back.
It's almost time to lock up the house. Then your party really begin.
No? Okay. We don't do commas here, I guess. That's something. Maybe I missed a... Yeah, I bet that's what it is. Yeah, this is why you need the type information. This is exactly why you need the type information. So the game state info, we've got an object with game state, players, and ID. I don't know, this all looks fine. Oh, look at that, selected card is null here. So maybe the exclamation point isn't about whether or not it's undefined, but rather whether or not it's nullable. I'm gonna have to check that. That's something. Because some of the types that I have handwritten here may not be correct if that's what's going on. Okay, so what I did here was I just stepped through the debugger to see like if players was ever not undefined, which it is here. So we do eventually get some players. So at this point, we've got players here. 5 of them from each time that I refreshed the page, and they've all got an ID field. But our player is not in there. I wonder why. I wonder if there's like I wonder if I need to force a refresh somehow. Maybe this is a cached value. Because if I look for this string in the JSON payload that I just pulled down, yeah, right there. So this makes me think that there's a cache in play, or at least there's an ordering problem, which is kinda to be expected. Yeah, because there's nothing about the way that I've written this that would encourage the game state data to be fetched after the registration happened, which is fair. I wonder, without doing too much side research here, so we've got get client ID, game state data, I'm going to look at the query docs. Yeah, there's got to be a way to force this to reload. Caching query results, okay. All right, so there's a poll interval that we can set. And this is kind of like the worst case fallback that I could do. Instead of using a subscription, just kind of like hitting the server every so often. I guess we can try that at least. So let's do like a, I don't know, I want it to be fast. So this is just gonna peg the server like all the time. Yeah, there we go. Can I look at the network tab? Yeah, look at that. It's just hitting the server over and over again. We'll do it every second, which is still a lot. But once we get the subscription going, then this hook will fire, the subscription hook will fire every time the server says there's changed data, which is going to be much better. And the server would recognize the data changed as soon as that registration happened. So that would effectively solve our problem. But I don't want to dive into the connection configuration stuff for subscriptions on stream tonight. I think I'm about ready to wrap up. So, but I guess, yeah, we can leave that polling happening there in the interim. Not ideal, but it'll give us something. So let's see. Too many browsers. So what we were looking at before we went down that rabbit hole, get all this logging out of there. I was looking for the mutation to fire when I hit one of these cards. And so we passed the is calling callback down to card picker. And we're not using it yet. Okay, so we've got indexes, which is what the callback wants. And so this code doesn't depend on knowing the player connection ID, which is kind of nice. It knows that it's going to run some code when we hit that click event. So let's see. You know what? I'm actually gonna space these out a lot more. I do not want all that chatter on the server. Although, yeah, that does kind of leave me stuck for the first 10 seconds. But okay, so we're definitely... Oh yeah, great. So the selection state is propagating. When we hit the button, the server gets the message to update the selection for the player. And then when we poll the server for the next game state, it's able to set that card selection to update the UI, which is awesome. Hey Metatensor, how is your experience with TypeScript? Well, yeah, I would say on the whole, it's pretty good. What I've seen in practice, we've been using it at work for, I don't know, maybe a little over a year and a half, something like that. What I've kind of found is that if you're not really careful, it's easy to strong arm the compiler by, ascribing your own types to things. And it's easy to get into a situation where the compiler can lie to you because of assertions you've made by explicitly typing one piece of the code base or another and doing so incorrectly. But that said, if you're careful, I think it can definitely help a lot, especially at refactor time. That's why I like working in Rust as much as I do, because the compiler feedback is so excellent when you're looking to make changes to type signatures and that kind of thing. So, right now in this app, the typing is super weak, and so probably once I get a little bit further on, or closer to the end probably, I'll invest a little more time in making sure that types are actually helping. But yeah, I mean, for overall, pretty good. Okay, so we managed to do a round trip. We're pulling a bunch of data down, we're writing it back, we're using GraphQL hooks, the server seems happy. I think probably the next big piece will be to get the subscriptions going. And once I get the subscriptions going, which I hope will happen in the next stream, then I can basically tighten up, and we're going to be into the last leg where I'm just wiring up the rest of the UI. So we need to wire up the call button. We need to be able to set the player name, and yeah, that'll do it. I think probably between now and the next stream, I'll work on getting the Apollo code gen working. And that should basically automatically type these objects that I'm getting back from these useQuery and useMutation hooks. That'll be a big help. But yeah, until then, I guess thanks for watching, and have a good night, everybody. I'll see you next time.